All right. Good morning, everybody. Let me know if you can hear me okay, please, before we get started. All right. Thank you, Marley. Good morning. Appreciate it. All right. So we'll go ahead and begin. Thank you, Marisa. Can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. All right. Good morning, all. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I always like to start with a question just to give us some time before we start meditation for the millions of followers to join us, as well as an opportunity for people to communicate and just share some thoughts. So, question I have for you today, and if you're new to joining us, welcome. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. Feel free to type in your response, as little or as much as you'd like. But the question I have today is, let me think of the best way to phrase this. Well, what I want to ask is how well do you do at staying in the present moment? I don't like saying how good are you at it. I don't want to assign judgment on it, but I do like to bring awareness to it. So maybe, what ways do you practice staying present, or how well do you do with it, or how much do you struggle? I have some things I want to share on that, but I'll go ahead and start with that question. Like I said, feel free to type in as little or as much as you'd like. I'll go ahead and type the answer or the question here. How well do you do at staying in the present moment? Do you have specific practices you use for this? How well do you do at staying in the present moment? Do you have specific practices you use for this? So there's the question. And like I said, feel free to type in as little as much as you'd like. There's no right or wrong answers. These are just things that, there's kind of this, there's a lot of just, I think, expressions, teachings, statements, cliches that get thrown around in Buddhism. And they get talked about as if it's, so easy to do. People say, well, just stay present, as if that's, all you need to hear. And then you're like, oh, great, I'll just stay present. Everything's fine. And then you spend the next 45 minutes thinking about staying present and the question or the challenge, and that's not really present at all. So I find that a lot of these ideas and practices within Buddhism are very difficult to put into your daily life. It's very easy to read. You can read a whole chapter on, staying present, but that doesn't mean you're able to do it. So, what's that look like for you? What is that all about? Um, uh, yeah. So let's see, Bill. Because of my meditation practice with returning to the breath, when I get lost in thought, I think it has spilled over into the rest of my life to help me be in the moment in general, room to grow for sure. And I struggle, but trying little steps. Jamie, putting the phone away helps me a lot. Yeah, definitely. Also having it always on silence. Um, yeah, it's interesting, and I'll touch on that in a minute, probably. Bridget, when my monkey mind is going wild and I realize it, I hone in on sounds and feelings and remind myself to breathe. Example, birds chirping, breathe, fan blowing, breathe, dog barking, breathe. Yes, Marley, fairly well most of the time when I find myself in a thought that is not in the moment, I say to myself, is this helpful? And usually that brings me back. Yep. Samir, very hard. Uh, let's see. Lena, meditation has helped as it's created a compound effect. When I start to leave the moment, I close my eyes, breathe, and listen to sounds around me. Definitely. Marisa, no specific practices, but I know that since I've started practicing Buddhism, I see more often when I'm not in the present moment and then able to flip the script and appreciate that moment. Yeah, definitely. What else? I have some things I want to share, but I'll let a few more thoughts to kind of trickle in. Um, what else? What else about staying present? So far, you're all doing exactly what I'd like you to do, which is what I'd hoped for. So I appreciate that. And what I mean by that is you're all responding with kind of what I would anticipate people to respond with and almost expect people to respond with based on the way staying present is taught or the way that people write about staying present. And of course, us thinking that staying present has to do with our thoughts because of meditation. And in a way it does, but I want to kind of expand on that a little bit. And the examples of, like, Jamie, you mentioned putting the phone away helps me a lot. And that's kind of a perfect segue into really why I bring this up, that we might think that the phone is what keeps us from being present, but the phone could be just as present as anything else. Um, Anything we're doing could be keeping us in the present moment. But what I really want to kind of point out, and this is really a much larger exploration, but just to kind of plant the seed a little bit before we start meditation practice, is that all of the responses, and they're all valid and wonderful and very real, but they're all tied to this idea or teaching that staying present means we're having this thought about being in the present moment, and if our mind wanders, we have to come back. And if our phone distracts us, we have to set it down. And that we use, as Bridget shared, birds chirping, fan blowing, things like that to come back to present moment. What I find hard is being around others who dwell in the past. Oftentimes I turn off social media, especially Facebook, because there's too much chatter. Yeah, definitely. So you're all sharing this kind of same general idea. Now, what I want us to do for a minute is to look at staying present completely differently from what you're all sharing, and think about the way you judge yourself. Think about, say, the way you were as a child and the way you compare it to yourself now. Let's say as a child, maybe you like to run or play a lot. And now maybe as an older adult or wherever you are in your life, you don't run anymore or you don't play anymore, whatever it might be. And so we do these comparisons and we say, I used to be like this. I used to do this and now I can't. I used to act this way and now I don't. I used to treat people this way and now I treat people this way. Other people look like this, and so I want to look like that. I remember when I looked like this and I want to look this way again. And I'm only using things from the past as an example. We could do the same thing going forward about how we perceive ourselves to be in the future. But what I'm getting at is staying present is really so much more than keeping the mind focused on a candle as you do a meditation practice. Because while all that sounds, fine and dandy, what good does that actually do in the big picture when you think about the practice of non-self? And this is really what this is getting at. We spend, and I use we very loosely because maybe you don't, but for the most part, we spend so much of our time comparing ourselves to what we used to be or how we used to be. Or we think of how we were growing up and we say, I am that person. Or we think of a book we've read and we want to aspire to be a certain way and we say, I want to be that person. Well, for me, the practice being present is this is what I am and who I am now. And if we're able to drop these stories and drop these comparisons and drop these cravings and desires to be different than how we are, then we embrace ourselves in the present moment. And again, I'm not talking about having thoughts about breathing in, follow breath in, breathing out, follow breath out. I'm talking about as you go through your day and you see someone and you say, wow, they look great. I want to look like that. That is a craving and a desire to be different from who and how you are in the present moment. You think about something from your past that you used to be able to do. Well, if you had never been able to do that in the past, then you would actually just be grateful and appreciate what you can do now. Again, let's just use the running example. Let's say you used to run and you can't run anymore. The only reason you would be frustrated with just walking is if you cannot run anymore and you're thinking about when you used to run. If you're not thinking about when you used to run, then you can just think, wow, I am walking, and appreciate that. So I'm really just getting at bringing being present into your life and having gratitude for what you are right now. And again, the responses are all wonderful and very valid and all beautiful things to work on and to become aware of, but they're all really geared towards kind of just meditate and focus on the present moment. And what I'm talking about is, why is all of that important? The reason most of us come into meditation or Buddhist practice is because we're dealing with the depression or sadness or anger, anxiety, whatever it might be, the stress, the worries, because our mind is constantly comparing ourselves to other things and other people and even to the way we used to be. So let's work on moving beyond these comparisons and just say, this is me now. And then ultimately you recognize that this me goes away and it's just, this is now. Because the me that you say you are now will be different an hour from now, a year from now, 10 years from now. So just a little light thought as we begin our meditation practice. So for those who are new, again, welcome. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. You won't figure anything out whatsoever. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Am I doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, help slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open, mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Knowing throughout the practice you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions, simply what's happening around you as you sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. And breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply going to continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Breath in, follow breath in. Breath out, follow breath out. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sound, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. Not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. Simply our own mind's reaction to the present moment. And this is really what I was speaking to earlier. In this moment, this is it. I always ask you to recognize the difference in how you feel now, which immediately means your mind may draw to the past, an hour ago, 5 hours ago, yesterday. But what I'm really hoping you recognize is that in this moment, sitting and breathing, that's it. This is you in the present moment. What you're doing in many ways is irrelevant, assuming it's morally, ethically okay. But being present is just being with what it is. Not judging, not comparing, not striving, not critiquing. It's just sitting and breathing. And if we can be this way and respond to things this way every moment of our lives, then judgment doesn't exist, critique doesn't exist, comparisons don't exist. But we spend so much of our lives wishing, hoping that this happens or that happens, or wondering why we did this or why they did this, or so much time spent worried about all those other things. And once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate all of that, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the present moment in life as it arises, then things get better. Because emotionally we respond better. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else. So I'll pause there, and I always prefer to just open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. I'd much rather address what's on your mind. If you have any thoughts or questions or anything you want to share about what I said at the start of today, feel free as well. I think it's a really important practice to begin to recognize that for many people, the reason we get into meditation and Buddhist practice is because there's some sort of dukkha, as the Buddha called it, suffering, discomfort, angst, unhappiness. And that the reason that unhappiness exists is because we are comparing the present moment to something else. We are comparing what we are in this moment to what we used to be or want to be. And once that falls away, I find it to be a much healthier way to live. So thoughts, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice. And again, just to clarify, I think the responses that everybody shared are beautiful and valid and wonderful and very real and true, because that's your experience. But even if you look at the series of 8 or whatever it is responses, everyone responded very technically about kind of present moment things. So it's just interesting to me how that happens. Bill, let's see. What does it mean when about halfway during meditation, I'm no longer focused on attention to the breath, not lost in thought? What does it mean when about halfway during meditation, I'm no longer focused on attention to breath, not lost in thought, and not asleep? Nothing. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, what does it mean if you're focused on your breath? It means you're focused on your breath. What does it mean if you're focused on what does it mean if you're lost in thought? It means you're lost in thought. What does it mean if you're not asleep? It means you're not asleep. My guess is you're probably not to doubt your meditation abilities, but to just challenge you to be very, not just for you, but for everybody. Most people lose their focus on attention and breath within about 5 seconds. And I'm being very generous there. The practice that I was initially, one of the practices I was initially taught by my master was, and you can all, don't be afraid to try this at home, as they say, especially since you're all at home or wherever you are. Simple practice of, and I'll give you an example. So my eyes are closed. Breath in, breath out, count 1. Breath in, breath out, count 2. Breath in, breath out, count 3. I'm saying it a little faster than I would do it, but just to make the point, I would go to 10, 1 to 10, and then backwards. Breath in, breath out, 10, breath in, breath out, 9, and back to 1. Once I complete that, 1 to 10, 10 to 1, then I would do the same thing, but to visualize the number being drawn. Breath in, breath out, and I would see a hand drawing the number 1. Breath in, breath out, I'd see a hand drawing the number 2. Breath in, breath out, I'd see a hand drawing the number 3. I would do that same practice, 1 to 3, or 1 to 10, 10 to 1, watching it drawn. Then after that, you would see the same thing, but you'd see the number being in a color, 1, red. Breath in, breath out, 2, in the color red. Breath in, breath out, 3, in the color red. And again, 1 to 10, 10 to 1. And then the fourth one is you would see it being drawn in a color and expanding. So breath in, breath out, 1, red, and I would see the number expand and come back. Breath in, breath out, 2, see the number expand and come back. So that's a practice of training the mind to be present. What does it mean? Absolutely nothing. So I don't ever recommend or suggest that we try to explore um, things that happen to us having some grand meaning. It's just, it's just what's happening. So, um, and if anybody gives you some answer that they think they know what's happening to you, that's really impossible. Um, or not what's happening to you, but what you're doing, because they're not you. So they don't know where your thoughts are at. Um, but if you're no longer focused on breath, and you're not lost in thought, and you're not asleep, your mind is somewhere. It's focused on something. So, all right. When I am able, the few times when I'm able to recognize my conditioned mind running, I give thanks and go cancel and relax back into the radiance of my real nature. Yeah, it's a so many wonderful little tips and practices and tricks, if you want to call them, that we use, and recognize the conditioned mind running, appreciate it, cancel it, and just kind of come back to present moment. So I had a friend years ago, when he was leading meditation, he had his hands on his knees, and every time he had a thought, he would, with his finger, he would tap his knee, almost as if to, bring recognition to the awareness of the thought. And so one time I was sitting there and I was watching him do meditation, and he was just sitting there tapping his knee constantly. So, yeah, it's a great practice. Uh, Bridget, please define right view. So, um, let me give a little context to it for those who might be new. The question of right view is addressing what is the start of the Eightfold Path. To sum this up, the Buddha's very first teaching is the Four Noble Truths. He taught that the first noble truth is life is filled with dukkha, suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. It doesn't mean all of life sucks. It just means every day we're going to experience things that we don't like. This is the first noble truth. The second one is the cause. The cause is greed, anger, and ignorance. Recognizing that we're constantly greedy, angry, and ignorant. And so we practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom to overcome these three poisons. The third noble truth is the ending of suffering, nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering. And the fourth noble truth is the path that leads to the ending of suffering. This is the Eightfold Path. The very first step on the Eightfold Path is right or correct views. And after that is thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. So the question of right view, two ways I'll respond to this. One is, for me as a practitioner, I look at right view almost as if the way I look at wisdom is that I don't know what extreme wisdom is, but the opposite of wisdom is ignorance. And I know when I'm being ignorant. I know when I'm acting from a place of greed, a place of anger, and a place of ignorance. So I don't wake up every day and think, can I live or abide in a state of ultimate wisdom today? I think, can I be less ignorant today than I was yesterday? And so when I look at right view, to me, it's very similar, but the way I internalize the teaching of right view really has to come down to the sense of the teaching of non-self and the sense of self. And that as I am perceiving the world, am I perceiving the world as if the only thing that exists is my view? And in that perception of the world, is my view that I am attached to, that I'm clinging to, put me as the focal point, as the most important? Or do I recognize that everybody is perceiving a situation the same way, and that ultimately my view is no better or worse, right or wrong, or different from anybody else's view? So Thich Nhat Hanh, and Bridget, you've probably heard me say this before, but he gives a great talk. The title is "What is Nirvana?" It's on YouTube, and he talks about nirvana being freedom from views. So here's the tricky part: is that the very simple question of what is the teaching of right view? Well, Thich Nhat Hanh says nirvana is freedom from views. And the way that I have always interpreted that, and it was one of the greatest teachings I ever really listened to, was that my entire life I'm going to have views. I have views right now. You all have views right now. You're sitting there, you're listening to me, and you're making some sort of judgment in a small or great way, small or large way, that you perceive what I'm saying as you like it, you don't like it, you agree, you disagree, you challenge it, you question it, you ignore it, whatever it is, you're making some view and judgment about what I'm sharing. That's what we do all day long. So Thich Nhat Hanh comes along and says nirvana, ending of suffering, is freedom from views, meaning that while I have these views, I do not attach to thinking that they are correct. And very practically, that's why I say there's kind of two ways. There's that side of things. And the other thing is, very practically, when I have my views, do I come from a place of thinking, as I said earlier, that it's all about me? Is my view that when I wake up, I need to make sure I eat and only I eat? Or is my view when I wake up and I'm making sure that I'm fed, that I'm also realizing the view that there are millions of people in the world who have nothing to eat? What is my view? Is it only from my lens? Or can I step outside of thinking that me, myself, and I am the most important person in the world? Most of us, our entire lives, have been raised, conditioned, and trained to think that we are most important. And for me, one of the greatest practices I've learned over the years is that I am no more and also no less important than anybody else. It's not about thinking that you're not important or that you don't matter. It's not about kind of diminishing the importance of who you are, but it's recognizing that you're no better or worse than anybody else. So think about this, Bridget, as you go through your day today and all these opportunities you have to engage with people and places and things in various ways. When you engage with whatever it is you're engaging with, are you coming from a place of it's all about Bridget, or are you coming from a place of what is this collective consciousness that's occurring? So hopefully that's helpful. All right, Samir, does Buddhist thought discuss the cause of anger? If so, what is it? Let me read. Marie says, oddly enough, I was thinking this morning about physical abilities that aren't as easy or pain-free as they used to be. So your insight is well-timed and valuable for me. Thank you. Yeah, I'll touch on that in a minute also. Samir, coming back to the cause of anger. The Dhammapada, the first line in the Dhammapada is mind is the forerunner of all evil. You could easily replace, and it's interesting because evil, I think, is a bit of a rough translation into the English, English translation, because we think of evil as, evil. But when I think of evil, I like to replace it as any emotion that we're experiencing. It could be anger, it could be sadness, it could be joy, it could be happiness. The cause of any emotion is your mind. That's it. That's very clear. That very simply is the Buddhist teachings on these emotions that arise. What other cause could it possibly be? It is your mind's reaction to a situation. It's very easy for us to say that they cause my anger. They don't cause your anger. They do things. You react. You cause yourself anger based on their actions. That doesn't mean their actions are good or correct or beneficial. Their actions may be incredibly harmful and dangerous and destructive. But their actions don't cause your anger. Your mind and your reaction to their actions cause your anger. So that's a real simple one. Just fundamentally speaking, the cause of any emotion, like I said, I'm repeating myself now, but is your mind. So when we're able to see things for how they truly are, and again, not based on our perceptions of them, we see things we don't like. We think we are right. We don't like what they're doing. We get angry. We tell them why what they're doing is wrong. And then we think we are entitled and that we're better. And then we spend the rest of our lives playing this us versus them mentality. And then we suffer our entire life. So this doesn't help. The practice is to understand that everybody's doing what they think is best and what they have been conditioned to do. Wisdom would really say, begin to understand this. You don't have to agree with it. If I see somebody doing harmful things to someone, it doesn't mean I'm going to go up and pat them on the back and say, good job. I will fight in whatever way I can to make the world a better place in hoping that these people stop doing what they're doing. But if I'm going to get angry at them, then I'm coming from a place of anger. And it's really hard to have wisdom when you're coming from anger. Come from a place of compassion, which overcomes anger. All right. Hopefully that's helpful. So Marisa, yeah, I mean, the physical abilities that aren't as easy or pain-free as they used to be. I mean, absolutely. And the crazy thing is that, whatever physical ability or say amounts of pain you have now, impermanence tells us that those in all likelihood aren't going to get necessarily better, right? So again, it's that comparing of, well, we used to have a greater physical ability and be able to do things completely pain-free, and now we can't. So we find ourselves in this situation saying, well, this sucks because I used to be able to do that. Well, the moment right now that you say sucks because you can't do something as pain-free as you used to, let's say 5-10 years from now, you'll be looking back at this day and saying, oh, I wish I only had a little bit of pain, right? I mean, I'm making that up, of course, because we don't know what the future holds. Maybe 10 years from now, you'll be completely pain-free because you'll figure out a way to work through it. But, that's what the Buddha taught, that we are born, we age, we get sick, and then we die. And we experience pain along the way. So as our bodies continue to age, they don't typically always work as well. And unfortunately, that's, very consistent for many people. But like I said, being able to wake up and say, this is how I am now, not how am I going to be or how was I, can be very beneficial. So, all right, anything else? We'll do one more question if anyone has anything before we wrap up. Thoughts, questions, comments? If not, I will close. All right, so we'll go ahead and close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, a few quick announcements. First, for those who were here last Saturday, which was many of you, there was no technical difficulty at the end. I figured since the entire talk was about our expectations and impermanence and the meditation changing and me cutting it early. At the very end, I would just click off and leave you all wondering if that was a technical difficulty, or if those of you who know me know that I was probably just trying to drive home the fact that don't attach or expect anything. So thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up the temple 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. So every night we have different practices going on. Those of us who lead, we're not monks or nuns or gurus or masters or teachers, not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. We closed 14, 15 months ago, whatever it is now, March 12th, 2020, and we are still closed. Everything is virtual. All our classes are online. Buddha for You is also closed. Also, if you need anything, you can, shop online there, Buddha for You. We, of course, are exploring what a reopening looks like. We've been exploring it and talking about it for a while now. I don't have anything to share yet, but when I do, you will know. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that. Safety of the immediate and larger community is our priority. So our view is if we've waited 14 months, we can wait a little bit longer and figure out the best way to reopen. But I am just grateful that we're exploring reopening. And if things keep trending in the right direction, then I'm pleased that we will be able to open at least on some capacity, hopefully relatively soon. So thanks all for being here. I wish you well. Please be safe. Continue to wear masks. Do what you can to protect others, because regardless of how this thing trends, the virus is still very real. People still die. This is no joke, and the pandemic is nowhere near being over. So I'm not negative. I'm just observing the reality of the situation. So thank you all for being here. Hope to see you soon.